other. Oh, how was you? Bro.
Well, actually, I can't do that.
No, I'm right there.
We'll switch if I'm already. No. Jesus Christ. Because as soon as you say something, everyone's going to that's live.
The very one in front.
Is this working?
This is ground balls. When I ran out.
everyone please take your seats? Thank you. So welcome. On behalf of Board of Trustees Chair Bob Arnold, President David Nelson, and Provost Monica Cowart, welcome everyone to the Keppel Auditorium and to Catawba College. We're pleased to have you here for the Spring 2024 edition of the CEO Lecture Series. My name is Imran Chaudhry, and I'm the Dean of the Kettner School of Business. The CEO Lecture Series is our signature event for bringing accomplished leaders to campus to share their insights and to have an opportunity to engage with the community. Past speakers have included noted entrepreneurs, policymakers from the Federal Reserve System, and senior executives from companies such as Duke Energy, GlaxoSmithKline, and Salisbury's own Food Lion. Today's CEO lecture features two individuals, both leaders in their respective fields, who also happen to be husband and wife. While they're joining us from Minneapolis, Minnesota, along with their 3 children, you will soon learn that they have Catawba roots and can offer some unique perspectives on pursuing your passions, on career success, and on family that we can all learn from. But I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. Before I get too excited, I'm going to pass over the mic to Catawba Board of Trustees member and F&M Bank Vice President Nicholas Means, who will formally introduce the speakers.
Good morning, good morning. I have the pleasure of introducing Glenn and Sarah Lloyd today. Glenn and I go back to probably 2004 or 5. 2004 or 5, we're here together as students and members of the football team. Glenn and Sarah Lloyd are executive leaders within their companies. They've been married for 10 years, live in Minnesota with their 3 children. Together, they strive to increase access for women and people of color in education and organizational leadership. Glenn Lloyd, Epilepsy Foundation of Minnesota CEO and Executive Director since 2020, is a passionate advocate for increasing access to opportunities through innovation, inclusion, and collaboration. He has more than a decade of experience in business development, program management, and strategic planning in both higher education and social services. Prior to EFMN, he was the executive director of major gifts at McAllister College, where he built a strong relationship with donors and alumni and cultivated opportunities for that institution. Glenn graduated from Catawba College in 2003 with a Bachelor's of Arts in Communication, where he now serves on the Board of Trustees. As well, Glenn earned his Master's in Public Administration from Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse University in May of 2023. And he also serves on the Syracuse University Hedricks Chapel Advisory Board. As you can see, Glenn does a lot. I don't know how he had time to come and speak to us today. Glenn has served on multiple strategic planning committees as the external strategist for Catawba's A College of Our Own strategic plan, and as the chair of the President's Council for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Gustavus Adolphus. Glenn is a highly effective communicator and relentless enthusiasm with professional experience in patient advocacy, public health, public policy, DE&I, interfaith cooperation, development, community engagement, executive leadership, and strategic planning. Whew! Now I can talk about his wife. Sarah is a principal owner at Bolton & Mank, Inc., based in Indianapolis office. With more than 20 years of experience, Sarah specializes in working with clients to deliver multidisciplinary municipal street and utility infrastructure projects. Sarah enjoys collaborating with clients and community members to help determine the right solution for a diverse group of stakeholders. Bolton & Mank employs just over 1,000 employees in 6 states. Within Bolton & Mank, Sarah is a founding member and leads the Bolton & Mank Women's Group and is a member of the Culture, Collaboration, and Equity Collaboration Thought Leadership Groups. Within the industry, Sarah serves on the board of directors for Minnesota Society of Professional Engineers and is an active member of the American Public Works Association. Sarah graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from South Dakota State University, where she now serves on the advisory board for the College of Civil Engineering. In 2023, Sarah was named the Notable Women in STEM by the Twin Cities Business Magazine, and Glenn was named the Notable BIPOC, that is Black, Indigenous, People of Color, Executive with the Twin Cities Business Magazine. The notable honors were given independent of each other, and the Lords are proud of their serendipity. Above all, Sarah and Glenn are proud parents of Harrison, Charlotte, and Draper. Please join me in welcoming Glenn and Sarah to the stage.
Good morning. Still morning.
We're so honored to be with you this morning, and thanks for having us. We're going to make some formal remarks at the end because we want to dive right in. No reason to get up this early and take all the platitudes. You've heard about us, so we're going to talk for about 35 minutes about our college years and leading into our college years, about our careers, the early stages. Then we're going to talk about our leadership stage of our careers as they are today. And finally, we'll talk about how we put it all together as a family. After that, we'll then take your questions. So as you have them, there is no question that is too simple. If you are interested to know, please ask. I assure you somebody else may be wondering the same thing. With that, we've never sat on a stage together before.
We have not.
The first time, okay.
Yeah.
Well, first time for everything. As you can share to start out, talk about what inspired you to pursue engineering, to become an engineer or pick that track in college.
Sure. So engineering is something that was always top of mind for me. My father is a civil engineer, so I had early exposure to engineering, loved the math and sciences in school as well. So always had that interest, went to school with the thought of majoring in engineering. Was a student athlete. I think we've got a number of student athletes here this morning.
Which sport, though?
Which sport? I was a women's basketball player at South Dakota State University. So as I got into engineering and into college, as a student athlete, we know there are a lot of challenges for time and pulls in different directions between study and practice. And I saw a lot of my teammates with what looked like a lighter load, not as much of a pull on time for the student portion of their work, because I had a lot of labs within engineering. So for a time, I decided, you know what, maybe engineering is a little too challenging, a little too tough. So I jumped over to econ, because I always also had an interest in business and some leadership in that way. So I jumped over to econ for a semester and quickly realized, yes, engineering was difficult, but I can't be an engineer if I do an economics major. If I want to do something in business, the engineering degree will still serve me well. So I jumped back to engineering, gritted it out, did not finish school in the 4 years, 4.5 that many do. I took 5.5 years to finish school, played basketball for 4 years, and then took another 1.5 years to finish my engineering degree. So engineering was always something I was interested in, and fortunate to have the exposure early on to a father and the industry of engineering to get that.
Well, we should just say out loud then we're both 5.5-year track folks. So if you feel like you're on that track and you're not going to finish in 4, the good news is you could be on stage someday just like us, right? But for all of you that are going to finish in 3 years, congratulations. Please do that as well. And if your parents are paying for it, I think they want you to finish in 2. Okay? The point is to continue to work hard.
Yeah, I think the point is with college, too, is you are building a great foundation for those next steps, a great foundation for your career, a great foundation for your personal life, for your family life into the future. So if you're wondering right now, what major to do, figure out what interests you, commit to that, and it's not set in stone for ever, really.
Well, I'll jump in here and then give you context to my college years. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. I had a family member come to Catawba. To be clear, I didn't know how to say it the first time either that I heard it. I remember my pastor back home totally made up a university that still to this day doesn't exist because he couldn't say Catawba. So for me, it was out of sight, out of mind. But the good news is that as I arrived here August of 2000, I came with a real energy to play football. And I wasn't very good, so let me be clear. Nick Means is way better football player than me. I was lucky enough to be on good teams. And as I arrived here, there's one thing I knew I wanted to do with my life. One thing. Lock this in. You may feel the same way. I wanted to be a judge. Yeah, I wanted to be a judge. So the reason I share that is my wife set out to become an engineer the first day she walked on campus, and she's an engineer. I walked on campus to become a judge, and now I'm a nonprofit executive. And I think that is some of how I got here, is that often life can be linear, and it can be on the winding path. For me, nonprofit leadership, I knew was going to require a lot of skills. Namely, I needed to lean into my strong communication skills. So I started here in political science, thought I was going to go get a law degree. Then about my third year of college, a really impactful professor, Dr. Carl Hales, inspired me in one of his classes. And that day I sat in the back of the class over in Hoke, and I cried because I knew I was no longer going to be a judge or a lawyer. I was going to do something very different with my life, and that was hard to come to grips with, that I was no longer going to be able to pursue the dream I had because I wanted to go in a different direction. I wanted to commit my life to improving the lives of others, and I was going to do it by working in nonprofit organizations. A quick side note, the reason that I felt so strongly about that is that I worked for one for-profit company. So if you are going to go work in business, you probably have an interest and you've taken a number of jobs. For me, my only for-profit job was Blockbuster Video. It was right there where the O'Reilly's
you
is.
Might need
right.
To let them know what Blockbuster Video
yeah.
was.
So no, that's right. They very much don't know what a Blockbuster is. So you'd go in and you pick the movie off the wall, and then they trade it out and give it to you. And you have to bring it back in 3 days. All right, 2 nights, bring it back in 3 days. And if you didn't, they made a ton of money off of late fees. It was a brilliant strategy. Here nor there, I work at Blockbusters. I was great at selling movie passes. Those who are older know the movie pass. You felt like you had made it in life when you could get a movie pass at $10 a month. And at the same time, a new company was coming along called Netflix. They were mailing DVDs to people, and I remember saying out loud, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Thus, I now work in nonprofit to make better decisions about serving others and encouraging their life. But beyond that point, I'd say at Catawba, one of the things that you will hear people often reference about Glenn is that I was everywhere. I tried a lot of different things. I was incredibly curious. I was in the chapel. I was focusing on vocation. I was dabbling in student government. I was on the football team. I had played in the pep band. I had done a lot of different things. But more than anything, I got into community. So there's this Christian ministry here in town called Young Life. And at that time, Young Life was just getting started in Salisbury. And I had grown up in a Baptist household. And because of my Young Life experience, my career took off. And that's how I find myself in Minnesota. Because I was traveling across the country, working at camps, and then I landed in Minnesota for one internship for one summer. And because I said, I'm young in life, I'm just going to do it for one summer. Well, now I'm up to my 18th summer in Minnesota. So please know that also if you go to a place, you can also just try for a little bit, but you should be prepared to know you may also stay. All right, so let's talk about staying in our careers. You come from South Dakota State. Now you're in the early stages of your career, Sarah. Talk to us about what it looked like in those early years of being an engineer.
Sure. So engineering is very much a male-dominated industry. When I was in school.
How dominated? Give context.
I think about 15% are women in civil engineering. And that was the case when I was in college, and it still is the case really to this day. So something I'm passionate about is trying to get women into engineering and reaching them at a younger age to stick with the maths and sciences. But so early in my career, graduating college at 22, again, a very linear path. I started working at Bolton & Mank. I worked with them as an intern in high school, an intern during college, and then right after I graduated college, I went to work for Bolton & Mank up in the Twin Cities. Early career as a civil engineer is being out on a construction site. That is how it works at Bolton & Mank. We think it's great to have boots on the ground, really learn how things are constructed. I'm working on street and utility improvement projects, so seeing utilities go in underground and then building up from there the roadway. So we're out in the field. So as you can imagine, a 22-year-old woman going onto a construction site with the construction workers, which are predominantly men. And a contractor who is, let's just say 55, there, and I, as a 22-year-old, am really overseeing their work, if you will. I'm there responsible to make sure that the job is constructed correctly. So some interesting interactions throughout that time, some interesting learnings as a 22-year-old working with these 55-year-olds who have a different type of education. They have the education of boots on the ground. So I really learned that leveraging respect really goes a long way. Respect for someone's lived experience, respect for someone's educational experience, and then how those can work together. So of course, I had that educational experience from school, but these men that are on the construction sites have been doing this for 25 years. And then I come in and try to tell them that they're doing something that's not per the specification or per the plans. And they're looking at me and saying, what the heck do you know? I've been doing this. So having that respect for them and communicating well with folks throughout those earlier years of my career to learn from them, gain the respect of others, and really, really work together. So that was about my first 5 or 6 years. But those foundational skills of earning the respect and having the good communication with those contractors is really something that's continued to serve me well throughout my career.
You know, as you talk about leveraging respect, you highlight the lived experience. And I guess we should say out loud that you also oversee college interns to this day. Mm-hmm. So you still work across generations. Yes. So to that point, when you talk about leveraging respect, what does that look like? Is it a certain level of willingness to ask leading questions to get people involved in the project? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, again, communication is a key thing when you're working across all the different age groups. Have that sense of really curiosity of asking them the questions. I look to not provide all the answers to the interns that I work with, so how can I help them grow and give them some responsibility, but then also help lead them in that right direction.
Yeah. So let's talk about my early stage of my career, because you heard first 5 or 6 years on the construction site. Just to be clear, construction site, you don't wear this outfit, right?
I don't wear this outfit.
Yeah.
Construction work boots, and getting dirty out there, walking through the mud and things like that. So
no red bottoms on the construction
no
site.
Red bottoms.
So to that point, I highlight that because my first 10 years of my career was spent in very much settings like this. I worked in higher education, and I dressed like assistant coaches because that's exactly what I was. So I spent most of my time with young people like yourselves, and I was usually a sounding board for your life. So when you think about your assistant coaches, that was my work, was to thoughtfully think about how to help you be successful, how to be there when the ish was hitting the fan, or your parents were going through a tough time and it was challenging you. For me in college, my mom had a bipolar episode while my junior year of college. And Chaplain Clapp was there for me, along with a couple of their coaches, when I was spending the whole night with my mom as she was having a depressive episode on the phone. That's the work that I was committing myself to, was to be a listening ear and a sounding board for college students. And that looked many different ways. So I coached men's and women's track and field. Any sprinters or jumpers in here, keep up the great work. Thank you for being in an Olympic sport. And I also coached football. I coached wide receivers. And because I didn't play wide receiver, I really was hard on them. So for every guy in here who wants to be a coach, coach some other position than you played. It'll make you a better coach. I did all those things and found myself working in res halls, having to intervene in emergencies. I, to this day, don't enjoy cheap pizza anymore, thanks to college students at 2 a.m. It just no good. No, thank you. Through that, the other piece I'd highlight is I also leverage respect, which is to say, you're 18, and I'm just going to tell you, you know a lot. Don't let people tell you don't know a lot. I think it's disrespectful. You know a lot, and you don't know nearly as much as you think you know. So there's a balance to multi-generational engagement that I think is critical. That 18-year-olds and 70-year-olds can work in the same organization, respect one another, have a curiosity that is always teaching and learning. And for your journey as you think about building a career and you wonder how I became a CEO, is oftentimes Sarah will say to people, Glenn can talk to anyone. The truth of the matter is that I can talk to anyone because I respect wherever you came from. Black, white, speak Spanish, speak English, tall, short, have a master's degree or a professional degree or have less than a high school education. I've learned that by listening and leveraging motivational interviewing, and I'll say that phrase again, motivational interviewing is a professional skill you can work on. So if you're looking for a catchphrase, there's one of them, motivational interviewing. There's a whole literature out there about learning how to ask questions and yield engagement. Because the sneaky truth is the most important thing that people want to talk about is themselves. And so if you're able to draw out what other people's interests are, they will think that you're a great conversationalist. So those are the skills that I leveraged early on in my career. And I just want to say something because I think we should let people in on a little secret. Sarah's an early bird. You've heard the phrase, early bird catches the worm. She actually wakes up early on purpose. I don't get it. If the sun's not up, you shouldn't be up.
A lot to do before the sun gets up.
Yeah, right? Yeah. It's helped you in a lot of ways. I'm not that. I'm what I like to think of as the janitor. I like to clean up and hang around late. And one of the reasons I share that with you is you also have to be true to yourself. There are going to be many things that you're going to do in life that you're not going to have a choice. And when you have a choice to do what you do well, do that. When someone asks you to help with a project, give them the best of what you can offer. So Sarah offers to help in ways that I won't help. And our routines of when we wake up is an example of what happens through life in partnership. The early bird does catch the worm, but I get all the tea at the end. And that has taken us quite far, 2 different paths in how we've gotten there. Mm-hmm. So to that point, let's talk about our leadership stages right now. You talk about leveraging respect. You said something about curiosity, and I wonder if you can talk, what does that mean in your leadership today in the work you do?
Yeah, To me, curiosity is learning, asking those questions, as you said, listening to folks. I think there's people across all the generations have a lot to offer. So again, as a leader in the organization, as someone that works with new college graduates, asking questions, learning what interests them. You know, one of the things that I look at, and the company that I work with, we really want to learn what people want to do and what they're good at. You will work a lot harder if you're in a position that you love to do. So while there's a lot of, foundational skills that we want you to learn as a new graduate starting out in our organization, what is the thing, though, that you love to do that we can capitalize on? Because you'll do a lot better in your career to do it. So I think, again, asking the young people questions and asking the older people, again, I've still got a lot to learn in my career. I've still got opportunities to learn and grow from the younger generation, as well as folks that have been in the industry for another 10, 15 years. So I think having that curiosity throughout your career, throughout your life, serves you so well.
Yeah, so let's talk about also how that plays out at a practical level. Should you tell them how we play trivia as a family? Do you want to talk about how if you ask somebody a question in our family and they don't know the answer, is that good enough in our household?
Well, no.
No, right.
No, yeah.
So we require with our children that you Google it. Now, this is going to blow you away. There is more information available to you today than was ever available yesterday. And how many times do you ask a question and move on without the answer? It's unacceptable. It's lazy. If you are going to strive to do great things, you cannot innovate out of ignorance. I have to say that again. You cannot innovate out of ignorance. I promise you today, somebody thought that they invented this really great app. And they found out 3 years later that there's a whole market of people that have been working on that same app and are eons ahead of them because they were too ignorant to go find out. Your curiosity will take you further than you ever imagined. And if you cannot Google it, don't tell me you're passionate about it. That's my advice. It's hard advice. It's what I tell people over and over again, and I'm shocked. We are raising children in this world, and we do not allow them, and they don't allow us to not know the answer. It's annoying. We have an 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Have you been around those ages all together at those times? Yeah, they're a curious bunch. And it is our responsibility to model the behavior of finding the answer out for them. My son, Harrison, knows more about the NFL pre-1990 than I do because of his curiosity. So to that point, as we talk about curiosity, I don't want to miss the moment to talk about being a woman in engineering as much as I'm a black man in nonprofits, and we should say out loud to people, my industry is dominated by women, her industry is dominated by men. And whether she is, while my wife is white, I think it's really clear to say that people of color are even less represented in engineering.
Correct, yes.
Talk to me, how do you open the door? Why did you start a women's leadership group at your firm?
Yeah, so I started the women's leadership group about 7 years ago. I just saw a need to help the women within our firm and within our organization to have their voices heard a little bit more. Again, when I started out from college, there were a couple other women that were further along in their career than me, and they wanted to be one of the guys. They were one of the guys within the organization, and I saw a different way that it could be done. We can be ourselves within the organization. We can be a woman in the organization. We can fully own that and be an engineer and be a great engineer. And I think also having the different voices at the table, right? Having a female voice at the table brings different perspective, brings different thoughts and ideas to a project, to a team, to a community that we are working in. We do a lot of outreach in communities for our projects. Women are showing up to our meetings, so obviously to have that representation at those meetings is important. But again, starting that women's group, I wanted to make that path a little bit easier. Well, hopefully a lot easier for the women that are coming up behind me. So how can we help better prepare them, help open some doors for them to make leadership opportunities leading clients and projects, even just a little bit easier than it was when I started.
I'm going to say something pretty controversial because I know this is a railroad town. Coming to a predominantly white college on this side of town, I had to go get my hair cut over by Livingstone. And that was of no big deal to me because I grew up in the DMV. But I know for my experience, it was painful at times to deal with the racial politics in these communities. So when I got into nonprofit leadership, one of the things that I have always kept in mind is that I was a black man stepping into any role. Frankly, it's an unfair expectation for black people to continue to have to clear higher hurdles. And I have no problem clearing a higher hurdle so that the next young person to come behind me that is black or Latino who is looking for an opportunity to lead, it doesn't have to be such a high bar. Now, the interesting reason that I raise that with you is that you're young enough to be naive enough to believe that it won't happen. And I'm very comfortable with that being your reality because I want you to also honor the people who have had to carry this burden and make it okay. And I challenge you to open the door for others. Don't be the person that pulls the ladder up behind you. Don't be afraid to go places that someone has told you that you can't go. It is critically important that we have courage with our curiosity as we strive for respect. And finally, I'd say the power of trust. I'm going to ask you in a second, Sarah, who are the folks that you listen to, you have in your spirit rolling around. But I'll answer it first and say that there's a book called The Trust Edge. The author's name is David Horsager, The Trust Edge. And David talks about the fact that business only gets done if we can trust one another. Now, I will say out loud, because I'm a political science novice, because I have a minor in that far too often we've been told we're divided. I would curse on stage, but I think my mother's watching. You're not divided. You're not divided. You have every opportunity to gain more trust in one another. So whatever's happening on TV, that's one thing, but we every day aren't divided. If anything, it is an invitation to gain more proximity and become closer. How do we do that? We do it by trust. And so if you can be your vulnerable, authentic self as much as you're finding out who that is, that's going to help someone else trust you. And folks who look like you, and folks who come from communities like yours. So if you are a white man in this room who comes from high wealth zip codes, what an opportunity to become more trusting and open the door for others. If you come from marginalized communities, what an opportunity to get to know someone better and gain trust. That is one of the things that I've leveraged often in my leadership. Is my responsibility to lead, is my willingness to trust others and then to gain more trust as we get to know one another. Let's finish on this point. Who do you listen to? What do you read? What has helped shape your mind?
I think a good one that I've listened to over the years is a TED Talk by Brené Brown. She's also got a couple of different podcasts, a number of different books. She talks about being your authentic self, talks about vulnerability. And I think, again, those are characteristics that take you a long way within your life, whether it's your career, whether it's your personal life, bringing your whole self to whatever area of life you are in, and being authentic and vulnerable, asking those questions. So I think those are great opportunities. If you've not seen her TED Talk or read any of her books, take a look at those.
Quickly, us as a couple, we're not going to air out all of our marriage and life together, but I think it's fair to give them something.
Sure.
I mean, it is obvious that we are invited to share as a married, partnered couple. How do we do this together? How are you a principal owner, leading a team, leading a women's leadership group, serving in an advocacy role? And then I think somebody else said it best. How do you put up with Glenn, is I think how the question was framed. So talk to how you see partnership.
Well, it's just that we are partners. We had conversations early on in our relationship. We both knew that we wanted a partner that had a drive and had a demanding career. And we both knew that we wanted leadership opportunities. So having a partner that understands that, and I will say we're never questioning one another when we're working. We understand the time that it takes to put into it, but we also have to balance that with parenting and being there and present for our children. But I think that we both knew coming into the relationship that we were both going to have demanding careers and going to keep striving for more throughout our careers. We have a mentorship program at Bolton and Mank, and one thing I always tell I'm often paired with young women as their mentor, and I tell them, choose your partner wisely. What do you want for your relationship and for your life? Do you want to continue striving in your career? Make sure that's known with your partner and that your partner is supportive of that. Do you want to work for 5 years and then stay home with the children? Make sure your partner's aware of that. You told me really early on you wanted a partner that was striving in their career. So it was a great fit in that way too.
Yeah, I did say that. Wow.
Yeah.
It's good. And the only other thing that I'd add on to that is we kind of break the gender stereotypes, and you all are a generation where this is happening often, but we just want to say out loud, for the men in the room, if you love to cook, lean into that. You will date better than men who don't like
Amen.
to cook. Right? If you like to cook, do it. How much do I cook in the house?
Probably 85% of
Yeah, that's right.
100% of the great meals, but I do some of the little things for the children. Yeah.
Yeah, so be able to embrace that, and it'll take you far. We'll pause, and we want to take your questions. We want to be in a conversation with you. Questions. Dean, I know you have the first one, so you can model coming up to the mic and asking.
So thank you both for the discussion, and I really just want to build on your last point, because I really was curious about this when we spoke even last month, a few weeks ago, and we discussed this during our call. So I'm a reader of the Wall Street Journal, which is not surprising, right? Because I'm a business dean and a professor. And there was an article, I would say last month or in December, and they talk about social trends quite a bit in the journal, that one of the fastest growing groups in the U.S. in terms of, if you look at married couples, are what we call dual income, no kid households, right? So DINKs is the term, and I find kind of what you're doing almost in that sense countercultural, right? Because you both have these very senior roles in your respective fields, but you're the parents of young children, right? So 8, 7, and 5, as you've said. So maybe just build on what you were saying before, if you would. How does that work operationally? And has it been something that you kind of organically evolved, or you had a plan? You say, okay, we want 3 kids, and this is how we're going to do it, because this is the right spacing, et cetera. And then how do you kind of organize your lives in that way? Because I find that quite inspiring, but also a bit daunting to think about all of what you're doing. So thank you.
Great question. Thank you for that. We're learning as we go. We're learning on the fly. But one thing that for me, for both of us, we've got great flexibility. It is very important for me to be home at the end of the day to have dinner with the children. When we can, to have dinner as a family. But I the children are not awake for much of the day when we're around, right? They go to school at 8 o'clock, and then they're home from 5:30 till they go to bed at 7:30. So I want to make the most of those couple of hours. So I'm very intentional about planning my day where I can be home by 5 so that I have those couple of hours with them before bed. And then I oftentimes go back to work after that. I can work from home for a couple of hours in the evening to catch up on what I need to. So working a good amount of hours, but finding how it works for us as a family. That's one of the ways that I prioritize and kind of work it all together.
And she's not giving herself much credit. This is just a harsh cultural reality. As the mom, the truth is she carries 90% of the load for our family. She coordinates everything. Calendars, I mean, the logistics are we have calendars that we share and see each other's lives. That's a practical, operational piece. But the truth of the matter is that she's a woman in society as a mom. She does more. So the question then is what is my role and how do I support? Often it played out when our children were in their infancy. I'd take the kind of midnight section of it all because, I'm a janitor. I like to stay up late. And that has worked out is that our lives fit really well because she makes it fit together. And I promise you there is about every quarter of our lives a chance when she reminds me, you might want to do a little bit more in the morning. And that's a gentle reminder that, Glenn, it's not just how you want to do it. There's still some part of this that is marriage that we're working off of our traditional expectations. So I do want to honor and say that Sarah does much of it. The practical nature also for me is I've been in traveling jobs. And so where it has been most painful that people don't see is when I could get on the mid-afternoon flight to fly somewhere, I often fly on the 9 p.m. flight. And I land at a destination at midnight or 1 in the morning. And then I get up and I leave on the 6 a.m. flight, as I will do tomorrow, to make sure that I can have as much family time as possible for the informal and practical nature of life. And that has come through learning, but that is what has worked for us is in my job, I can do everything I can for my family. And sometimes that means not getting all the sleep that I want because it also signals to my partner that I care about what's important to her. Other questions? Thank you.
Great program. I heard a guy say one time that the definition of culture was what you tolerate and what you celebrate.
I wonder who told you.
It was you. Sarah, in work, what are some examples of that, especially after you get in the situation about women in engineering, but what are some things that are practical examples of that?
Tolerating and celebrating. I think tolerating is, working with the young women that are going out to construction sites and understanding what they should and should not tolerate on a project. We're very clear with them. In general, everyone's pretty great on construction sites, but we are big on celebrating at our organization, celebrating the small victories internally, that a team, meeting a deadline, meeting a great project, as well as the larger, a ribbon cutting on a big project. But we're big on celebrating and recognizing the great work that everyone does. And I think that's important. That helps people want to come to work for that, or knowing that things are recognized. That everybody maybe just works a little bit harder when they get that acknowledgement.
And maybe talk a little bit about in your culture group how you invest in families coming together from the firm.
Yeah, we do. We do a number of things across the organization. Just I often say that you're bringing your whole self to work. We can't ask you to leave your personal life completely at the door. There's a lot of things that are happening, and you're not just going to leave that at the door when you walk in for those 8 hours or whatever you're at the office. And we recognize the sacrifices that folks make, that families make, and we really want to celebrate that as well. So we have annual events where we invite the families in and celebrate as a group the great work that the employee has done, and then the support that the family has provided throughout. So those are some of the things that we do to celebrate the employee and the broader family and groups of the support system.
The other piece that I think we both share in our senior leadership roles is don't expect people to work outside of how you work. But the example is that we've come through a pandemic, and there's a lot of conversation about the workforce coming back into office. I will say out loud that as the leader that I am, I've allowed my staff to remain hybrid and remote, and I promise you, gotten a ton of feedback from my board about if that's the appropriate thing or not. However, I also believe we are in a generation of aligning what we expect of our leaders and making sure that what we expect of our line staff, of folks on the ground every day, that our leadership also models that. So I myself have ensured that our staff remains hybrid and remote because that's the only way I can get my job done. And for Sarah's work, as usual, I can talk about her because I'm proud. Her staff is in the office, and she works her tail off to be in the office, and then goes home and spends that 5 to 7 with the children, and then goes back to her computer to work for a few more hours. That's what leadership has been looking like for us as a culture, and that's one thing that I would really encourage everyone in the room is to embrace the fact that if you can expect it of someone else, expect it of yourself first, and it will go a lot further in building trust in your organization.
To student athletes who at the time spent many an afternoon on a court or on a field, and you were working towards a Saturday, right? Short-term work for a short-term solution. Now you're past all that. What are those things that you didn't think about then that you think about now that make you more competitive in the workplace, make you a better executive, those lessons you learned on the field and the court, maybe make you a better spouse or a better parent?
That's a great question. You want to lead this one?
Yeah, sure. One thing that I think it falls in the hate category for me. I hated winter workouts. They're just painful, or off-season workouts. The coaches, I'm sure they love us, but it doesn't feel that way at 5 a.m. in the morning in March. And so one of the things that we really focused on was showing up, right? If you're going to put the work in, you got to show up. And I will tell you that was really hard for me, was to continue to show up. I'm going to be frank with you. I didn't love football. I was pretty good at it, but I didn't love it. So fundamentally for me, it was the responsibility to keep showing up. And it's played out in life that I believe that the greatest availability, best skill that you can have is availability. Is if you can push through the anxiety and the stresses of life and keep showing up. You're going to have some hard conversations if you're in management with your staff. And I can tell you that there are many of leaders that I've been around that are conflict avoidant. And it's because I've played sports that I've learned you can't succeed if you can't have hard conversations. So you got to keep showing up. And good things happen for folks who make themselves available often. And so if you look at your other colleagues, or in this case, you look at your classmates and wonder why somebody is getting the chances that you aren't, sometimes it's not the fact that they are more or less talented than you, right? There's some really talented people who don't make it on the field. It's just true. There's a lot of talented people who don't make it to the field or the court. I found that it's the people that we can trust that we put our lives on the lines for. So circling back to that principle that I learned from athletics is you keep showing up and you build a certain level of trust. And sometimes there's a more talented guy that is inconsistent that you'd never want to have in the huddle with you. But you'd rather have the consistent guy who may not be as talented, but you knew that he gave it his all and he showed up every time, no questions asked. You could count on they were going to give it their all. And I'd say professionally in our partnership, that's become really important. The last thing I'll say is you don't lose the competitiveness. We compete nearly in everything. When she got the notable award in April, it was awesome. The Twin Cities Business honored her, right? She's doing great things. A little piece of me inside was pretty upset. The good news is that 4 months later, I also won a notable award, so all is well. But to this day, Sarah's a better athlete than me. Her shot is more pure. She has better lateral quickness. And that tenacity, I think, is really important, is that we also never back down. We really, really enjoy competing. I mean, I'm talking about it's Kobe. All that stuff happens in our marriage on a regular basis. Connect Four. Tic-tac-toe. And they can't beat me in those things. I'll just be clear. I'm dominant.
I'll just add a little bit too. I think relationships, in athletics, we are told that we are competitors. We're not friends with the opposing team. They're the enemy. I think that can kind of carry into business as well. We've got a lot of competitors, competing consultants within the industry, but to form those relationships now, have those relationships across the industry. Relationships are going to take you a long way, whether it's through professional organizations, partnering on future projects, and things like that. So I think relationships, we've got great relationships from our college time with our teammates, but then also understanding, building those relationships across the aisle with folks that maybe aren't supposed to be your kind of friend and building a relationship with.
Yeah, please, come on up. Both of you, come on up, and we'll take them.
So my question was, as a woman in STEM and also a person of color, what can I do to be taken seriously in job roles and not just be like a diversity hire?
Say the last part, please.
Sorry.
No.
I was saying, as a woman in STEM and also a person of color, what can I do to be taken seriously in a job rather than just be hired as like a diversity hire?
Yeah, great question. I think preparation, being prepared going into those interviews. You've gotten your foot in the door and know about the company, know about why you're wanting to be there, how you can provide value to them, and what you're hoping to get out of that job, that internship, or whatever. They're fortunate to have you in the room and to have the opportunity to hire you. So I think doing some research and knowing something about that company, that job that you wanted, and why you'll be great for them and a great hire.
The thing I'll add, not that I'm in engineering, as a person of color, I'd offer that what gets you to an interview are many different factors. Don't rob yourself. Don't rob yourself of how you got to that interview. Plenty of times I led a president's commission on a diversity plan at a predominantly white institution with 90% of my colleagues being white. And I thought, man, why they have the only black guy on campus in a management position lead this effort? And then I realized that was just one aspect of why I was at the table. I don't know how much to weigh. Was it the majority of the reason? Was it a minority? I knew it was a reason I was at the table. And so I took advantage of the opportunity to put my best work forward. And the truth of the matter is that oftentimes this is the higher bar I talk about. That by being a diversity hire, it may feel like you're only checking a box. I promise you, as you embrace your identity of being a person of color and all that you bring to the role, it will become very clear of why you are in the role you're in. And it rarely is because of your racial background. But boy, what an asset that your company could see a person of color and make room. Because there's a whole lot of companies that aren't courageous enough to make room even for diversity hires. This is what I was saying about trust and saying, frankly, to all of the white folks in the room. If you don't know where to start, If a diversity hire is the only way you can wrap your mind around it, fine, we'll take it. But just know you have a very talented person wondering, is that the only reason that you gave them the interview? And then our responsibility is to just freaking kick the door in and let them know, well, you let me in now, I'm just going to run things. At least that's how I've approached it. Good luck.
So both of you have been successful in fields that may not have been in your odds or in your favor. You talked about to keep showing up. What was your driving factors to keep showing up every day when you got to those hard hurdles and hard times when you're trying to be successful in your respective fields?
How did we keep showing up? You know, for me, it was knowing my goal, knowing what I wanted to do, kind of that first kind of step. What is the next step for me in my career? And it has not always been easy. It has taken me longer to get to certain milestones and steps. And it's really just continuing to work hard, continuing to talk to folks. I think it's important that we let people know what our intentions are, what our goals are. I often say, you know, we are the ones that are thinking the most about our career. You may have a supervisor, they're also worried about thinking about their career and what they're doing next. So we need to keep talking to those folks and letting them know what we want to do. How, you know, different leaders within organizations, if that's what you're looking for. But letting your intentions and your goals be known, but then just continuing to work and continuing to, you know, maybe highlight that work. I think that's another thing that I see as a woman in the field. I am happy to have my nose to the grindstone and put out great work, and let the work speak for itself. My male counterparts, they may, you know, shout it from the rooftop of this awesome project that they did or this great accomplishment that they did. And then they get recognized and acknowledged a little bit more. So how do I then speak up and advocate for myself? But again, putting in the hard work and continuing to do that and letting your goals be known to help you get there.
I'd layer onto that excellent answer and say, if you hear a term in your work that you don't know anything about, one of the ways in which I've gathered a lot of skills is the willingness to continue to find out more answers, right? So I'll say this because I'm also in the ivory tower sitting on the stage. I never wanted a PhD. God bless folks who do. I didn't want that. Frankly, I didn't even pursue a master's degree because I didn't just want to have a master's degree to say I had one. So I was always raging against the machine. I'm sincerely like the most suburban teddy bear revolutionary you've ever met. Like, I just hated all the structures that told me of how I had to do it, and it didn't feel sincere to my journey. However, I knew there were things I wanted to learn, so every time I heard someone say something I didn't know, I went and spent the time to ask the person in that department who was working on it, what did that mean? Like, motivational interviewing wasn't something I knew until 2011, because I asked a colleague who was teaching classes around motivational interviewing. When I knew nothing of what a statement of financial position was, I went and found out what it was. When I tried to understand ROI and how it was measured in business terms, I went and sat with other leaders who measured their work in ROI. When I'm trying to understand what a venture track is for a company and what are the different stages, I went and asked folks who had started ventures and started to find out more information. And so the keep showing up every day, if you're thinking about nonprofit leadership, is to appreciate the fact that you're going to, frankly, be surrounded by a lot of smart people who knew exactly what they wanted to do. And I promise you, the PhD folks knew what they wanted to do. Your chemistry professor knew they wanted to be a chemistry professor. God bless them. I didn't. But I am willing to continue to learn and engage with folks who are learning in that way, even folks like athletic training. I don't know if you've ever sat and watched an athletic trainer wrap an ankle. If you watch them 1 year from the next, I promise you what's amazing about them is they've learned 10% more how to do it efficiently with less tape. That type of person is somebody that I want to be around and keep learning. So showing up around other folks who are doing good work, and then when you don't know something, going and trying to be curious about finding out the answer, and don't just try to only find out through Google. Build a relationship with someone who's doing it, and it'll take you far, in my opinion. Yes. Great sweatshirt. Look at this.
What are your thoughts on the ethical responsibilities of business in today's society?
Say the last part again.
What are your thoughts on the ethical responsibilities of business in today's society?
Yeah, ethical responsibilities of business today. I think businesses had no choice but to be ethical. Do you want to be in business or not? Listen, we don't live in a day and age any longer where it's okay to be unethical and to succeed if we are willing to allow people to tell their stories and for us to forge ahead. Social responsibility, I would say, when I think about climate responsibility, it comes down to something. I chuckle, okay, because I'm a climate guy. I don't know if you know this. I'm a climate guy. I really believe in making a better foot forward. My wife will tell you, maybe she won't tell you on stage, but she'd tell you it drives her crazy, okay? Because I will get the electric car.
I also love the climate.
No, I'm not saying you don't love the climate. It drives me crazy about how practical, like, I become. I don't take an extra paper towel.
I do.
I actually rent electric cars when I go to Hertz. I have range anxiety, and I still drive the car so that I can put my best foot forward. If that's what you're thinking about in ethical behavior in business, it's sometimes to lean into the fact you're going to be really uncomfortable. New standards about pronouns. First time I heard it, I came home and I told Sarah, I said I had to introduce and tell people he, him, his. I still don't know who he, him, or his is. My name is Glenn. And guess what? I had to lean into it because it mattered to someone else that I saw their journey, and I referred to them as they, them. So the ethical requirements are going to be uncomfortable. If you are interested in doing business to as many people as possible, I'm also probably interested in politics way too much. Instead of rigging the game to have less people involved, we should be rigging the game to have more people involved. This type of invitation of ethical behavior that extends the invitations and opens our arms wider is the world I want to fight for. So that's my answer to ethical is that it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to take you some work, and it's going to be painful at times, but I think that that's the only way we're going to survive in business in general, is to be ethical.
Well said.
Okay.
What was the hardest part about being a student athlete?
Say again?
What was the hardest part about being a student athlete?
The hardest part, I think just committing to, it's not a balance. I very much dislike the word balance in any part of life, but committing to the schoolwork, right? You have a schedule for your athletics, but I think making sure that you stay committed to the school. That is why we are here. That's why you are here. Committing to that, the academics and the studying part, but trying to find the right integration and balance of the two when you have a set schedule for your athletics. But you also need to get your schoolwork done, get to study hall, and do well on those tests, because that is, for 99% of us, it's school that's going to take you farther, not athletics after you graduate. So I think it's finding what works for you, but making sure that we stay focused on the reason that we're here at school for studying.
I think it's a sacrifice. And the reason I title it The Sacrifices is that the sacrifice isn't the same for everyone. I gave up a lot of Catawba things because I wanted to be in community and service. I don't nearly know my teammates well enough because I sacrificed that to go and serve in community. I sacrificed not going to parties and building relationships in that way. I sacrificed, in some ways, dating because I wasn't going to be flexible and available for a relationship. The sacrifice is quite individual, and at the same time for student athletes, I'd say is foundationally, you are already up against perceptions that you're not smart enough. So I often believe that student athletes are committing themselves to the classroom even more than folks expect you to. And I acknowledge then that you're also sacrificing other things that aren't going to be your college experience. You won't ever know what it's like to be in the stands if you play football, cheering at a football game. It's a weird sensation. The first time you go to a football game after being in college, it's weird. You're like, why am I so far away from the field? I can't hear what the coaches are saying. What did the ref say to that guy over there? Like there are just things that you no longer can associate and understand. And it'd be true across many sports. And so I think it's also embracing the fact that you will sacrifice. And I think it's your greatest asset as a student athlete, is that you have lived what it will mean to lead. You will have lived it. If you are sincerely embracing the student athlete side of it, you will have lived it. And so you are actually further ahead than many people if you are willing to embrace that reality. You aren't meant to do everything. And the more you can get comfortable with that, the further you will go. I like this. Can we just keep answering questions? We could do that all day. It's okay.
Did you guys always, do I need to talk in the mic?
No, you good. You good.
Did you guys always see yourselves as leaders, and like what characteristics do you guys feel like a leader should have?
Yeah. Do we always see ourselves as leaders?
I think it's something we always knew that we wanted to do. What it looked like and what that meant has probably evolved and changed throughout the years. But for me, I knew I always wanted to lead at in some capacity. What are some of the characteristics? I think comes back to kind of some of the things that we mentioned. Communication, great communication, being curious. Glenn mentioned asking the questions. You won't know all the answers at any time throughout your career. So I think continuing to be curious and ask questions and having that level of respect across the board for really everyone that you interact with.
I don't know. I don't know if I've always wanted to be a leader. I just know I've had a responsibility to do my best with what my skill set is. And the other thing I'd tag on to that is to believe to be a leader is to also believe in the power of following. And so I've actually committed myself more to following than leading. And what I mean by that is that when you believe you are surrounded by other leaders, how much you can fall in line with them says a lot about who you are. In your life, when you go home, interesting enough, you're leading. You're in charge of your own life if you're making decisions for your best interest. When you partner, it's a trade-off about who's leading which day, which moment who's leading. And in my nonprofit journey, I've been both leader and follower. Even to this day as the CEO, my board actually are the leaders. I'm simply the executive they've hired to run the day-to-day. So I'd encourage the notion that leadership is not a mantle, it's behaviors. Mm-hmm. And the behaviors that I found to be most important are respect and trust and curiosity, and then a can-do attitude. Nobody wants to be around the know-it-all who says we can't get it done. Man, those people are annoying. We ain't never done it, but you already know that it can't be done. Please don't spend any time around those folks. Go find somebody else to associate with. Be around folks with a can-do attitude. It'll go really far.
So, so I'm a graduating senior, and I'm considering grad school. What can you say about the necessity and pros of getting a master's, an MBA?
Yeah, thank you for the question about pursuing a master's degree in graduate school. I did interview at a law school, a business school, a public policy school, and I think I've also looked into a master's in special education, a master's in education. My answer to this is only pursue things that you actually want to be thought of as a master. If you get an MBA and you don't know how to run a business, like the finance side of it, I think you are robbing people of what MBA stands for. Business administration means you understand all the principles necessary to on day one show up and do it and master it. This is also a word to all the folks who own master's degrees is you never stop learning in that space. So for me, I wanted to find the thing that I could master and be really proud of and keep working on. So public administration for me is a calling. I like the intersection of problems and needs in society and my leadership in being able to make successful coalitions, write effective bills, understand how to write a fiscal note, how to advocate with the legislator, understand the administrative aspects of that work, understand the role that the media plays in that, understand how to partner with other nonprofits and other community organizations. That's what it takes to be in public administration. And as you think about your master's degree, look at the classes that are being taught, and if you feel like that is the foundational information you need to go master and lead in community, that's why you should get the degree. I am so tired of our society telling us we need MBAs. It's a lie. We need more people committed to learning and then mastering that learning to go be leaders in their work on day one. We don't have time for potential. We don't have time for potential. If you got an MBA, you better show up tomorrow ready to put the foundational principles necessary. Statistics, accounting, financial literacy, budgeting, that better show up with you once you have a master's degree. And so as you pursue your graduate work, please know, look at yourself in the curriculum and then look at yourself beyond the curriculum and say, that's where I will be most proud to carry a master's degree from and for. So one
Folks,
more.
we'll take one last question and then we can continue the conversation at the reception. So thank you.
Thank you. So you guys have both been a part of multiple different teams, whether that be your family, your job, or a sport. What do you think the most important quality within that team is?
I think Glenn's comment on trust. I think for our family, we trust that we're going to show up and do the right thing for our family. Our children trust that as well when we are working the long hours or traveling for business. Trust our teams at work. Trust that we're going to lead them in the right way. Our people our clients that we work for trust that we're going to do the job to the best of our ability and produce a good product for them. So I think that's what I would say.
I agree.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.